Hey there, welcome back to Grief, the emotional shitstorm you never signed up for. If this is your first time here, I'm Margaret, a woman's life empowerment and holistic grief coach, and I'm so glad that you found this space. This series is all about navigating the messy, complicated, gut punching reality of grief that we all go through at some point in our lives. You cannot avoid grief. So I want to ask you a question. Do you ever feel like grief sneaks in like an uninvited guest, kicks off its shoes, and starts dismantling your entire sense of self? Yeah, me too. Grief doesn't just take what or who you've lost, it takes a part of you. It messes with your confidence, makes you question your value, and suddenly you're looking in the mirror wondering who the hell is looking back at you. If any of that sounds familiar, then today's episode is for you. We're talking all about how grief impacts our self worth, why it happens, how it shows up in your everyday life, and most importantly, how you can start rebuilding and reclaiming who you are. Because grief doesn't get to define you. May feel like it, but it doesn't. So here's the thing about grief, it doesn't just hit you with sadness, it takes a wrecking ball to your confidence, your identity, and your self worth. So I want to ask you if any of the following sound familiar to you. One, you question your value. If someone you loved has left you for whatever reason that was, you may start wondering, was I enough? Did I do enough? Am I even worthy of happiness now? What's wrong with me? This was totally me, totally me when I was going through my own separation and divorce. And it took a really, really, really long time for me to come back from that experience and feel worthy again and feel of value. So, what about this scenario? Your reflection in the mirror doesn't even look like you, or at least the you that you know, and it looks really foreign, like you're looking at a stranger. Maybe you've lost weight. Maybe you've gained weight. Maybe you've aged overnight, or you just don't feel like you anymore because grief changes you. So when you look in the mirror, you don't recognize yourself, which can be really, really scary and unsettling. Grief has a really sneaky way of making you feel like a ghost of yourself. And so looking in the mirror, you may not see yourself looking back. What about this scenario? Your sense of purpose, gone. Poof, disappeared when the grief hit. So the things that you used to love, like writing books or running marathons, suddenly feel pointless. You question if you're still good at your job or if people still care about you, if you even matter, and if what you do matters. Just a spoiler alert, you do matter, and what you do does matter. What about this scenario? You overcompensate. Maybe you throw yourself into your work, you're people pleasing, or taking care of everyone else but yourself, because deep down, you don't feel like you deserve to put your happiness first anymore. And this was totally me. I did everything I could not to focus on me and how I was feeling because that was my protective mechanism. And I did all the things and pleased all the people around me to help me feel useful and productive and of value without actually having to look within. So I want to share a story about a client that I worked with. She was amazing at her job. She was the director of nursing. She looked after people. She gave her all. And she lost herself in the process. She was a caregiver to all these people. And the grief that she experienced in this role took its toll on her sense of self as she poured everything that she had into those that she was caring for. So if you've been a caregiver, you may relate to this, whether you are a caregiver to a parent, a caregiver in your job, or you're caring for your children who may especially have special needs. So as a caregiver, that brings a whole other level of grief. So when she started working with me, she was completely depleted and she'd witnessed so much death and was emotionally numb. And she knew it. And she actually said to me that she was broken. Those were her exact words. Margaret, I am broken. She had no idea who she was and was so far from feeling joy and feeling worthy of feeling joy. In fact, she didn't even know if she had ever felt joy in her life. So we worked together and we dove really deeply into why she couldn't feel joy. And we did some really deep emotional healing. And now, now she is living her best life, full of joy and beauty and wonder. And she is no longer broken, just like you are no longer broken. She was able to put herself back together, and so can you. She didn't let her grief define her. She didn't let her grief decide that she wasn't worthy to feel joy or experience joy and all the beautiful things in the world just because she had experienced such heavy grief through her work. And you don't have to let grief define you either. It's a part of you, but it's not all of you. And I talk about this a lot, and I think it's really important to remember that grief can come from so many different experiences. It's not just death. Grief is truly any loss or change that you experience in your life. And I've got a few examples that I'm going to share with you and see if you can relate to any of them. And these are ones that I'll tell you can really, really, really take a hit on your self-worth and make you feel completely worthless. So the first one, very popular, is the loss of a partner, either through death, divorce, or a breakup. I'm sure all of us have been through a breakup at one point. And you start questioning, was I enough? Why wasn't I chosen? Am I unlovable? And in the case of death, we often ask, why me? Why them? What did I do to deserve this? What did they do to deserve this? And then we start questioning our spiritual side. How could you let this happen to me? Right? We're very egocentric people, and everything that happens around us, we tend to try and figure out why it's happening to us or how we've controlled that. But when someone leaves us, it can really take a hit to our self-worth. And there's that grief around the loss, but there's also the grief around us not feeling good about ourselves anymore. Then we also have the example of experiencing infertility or losing a pregnancy. This is huge, deep grief of feeling like your body has failed you, betrayed you. You feel inadequate. You question if you're less than because you can't have a baby or you can't carry a pregnancy. I personally know this firsthand. I struggled with infertility for 6 years, and it rips you apart. I started feeling less than what a woman should feel like. I thought this was something natural that you should be able to do. And there was a lot of grief and anger around my body not doing what I expected it to do, right? Then there's also the idea of the loss of a job or a career change or restructuring within your company. When your professional identity is taken away, it can feel like your worth was tied to your productivity or role. And without this role anymore, who are you? If you have defined yourself based on what you do and you lose that or it changes, that's going to be a really big hit on your self-worth. Especially if you think about it, when we're out networking and we're talking to people, what's the first question people ask you? What do you do? Oh, I'm the VP of marketing, or I own my own company, or I'm a district manager, or I'm a frontline worker, or I'm a novelist, I'm a marathon runner, whatever it is, we identify ourselves by what we do. And when that changes or is taken away from us, it is a huge loss and a really big hit on our self-worth and sense of self. Then there's another example of losing a friendship. That happens all the time, but we don't really give it credence. So whether you've drifted apart over time, or there's been a betrayal in the relationship, or you're going through grief, or they're going through grief, and your relationship changes because of it, it starts to make you wonder, was I not good enough to be the friend? Was I not good enough to apologize to? Was I not good enough to keep in touch with? You start putting that again, very egocentric. What did I do wrong? What needs to change, right? What could I have done better? And we question them. What about the example of struggling with your health or just simply aging? If your body isn't what it used to be and illness has changed what you're able to do, or you've just gotten older and maybe you can't walk the stairs as well, you may feel like you've lost that part of your best self. So you've lost part of who you were before, what you're able to do. And there's grief attached to that as well. So I'm curious, how many of those experiences have you actually experienced, right? Have you lost a partner? Have you experienced infertility or pregnancy loss? Have you lost a job or had your career change or been restructured? Have you lost a friend? Or are you struggling with your health and aging? How many of those have you actually experienced? I wouldn't be surprised if it's been a few. For me, 4 out of 5 on these. Lots of grief. And you are so not alone in this. And that's something I really want to get across to everybody is you are not alone in your experiences. It may feel very lonely and you may feel like you are the only one because you are experiencing it in that moment. But there are so many people going through similar things. Yes, it's very lonely. I will give you that. Grief is a very lonely journey, but you are not alone. And grief has a way of dimming your light, but you're not about to let it snuff you out completely. That was a tough one. So let's talk about some of the absolute BS that grief tries to make you believe. We're going to go through a few lies. We'll see how many of these you believe. Lie number 1, you'll never be the same again. Well, the truth is, you won't be the same. But that doesn't mean that you're broken or you're of less value or less worth. You are evolving. You're not disappearing. You just need to figure out how to integrate the grief that you've experienced into who you are now becoming and step into this new mosaic of yourself. It's hard. It takes time. It takes healing. It takes intentionality. But you are not most definitely the same person that you were before, but you're a better version of yourself, if that makes any sense. Line number 2, you don't deserve happiness. Well, the truth is, grief is not a punishment, and your happiness is not a betrayal. You are allowed to find joy again. You are here. You are breathing. Grief is just a part of your journey, and you do not need to live in grief forever. Grief is there as an experience, as an event. It helps to shape who we are, but it isn't who we are all the time, right? If that does that make sense? We are not our grief. Grief is something we feel, but that is not who we are at our core. Line number 3, you're very weak for struggling. The truth, struggling with your grief means that you are surviving. It takes tremendous strength to wake up every day and keep going. And when grief wants to pull you under, to get up in the morning, get out of bed when all you want to do is crawl back under those covers. So struggling through your grief actually is a strength, and it means that you are surviving. Line number 4, nobody really understands what you're going through. Well, the truth is, maybe they don't understand your grief and exactly how you're feeling, but there are a lot of people out there like me who get what it means to feel lost in your grief, to feel what it is to grieve. And there's we all bring our own experiences, our own thoughts, our own ideas to the table when we experience grief. And so we all do experience our grief very differently, but we're not alone in our grief. And so when you talk to someone else who's lost a child, or someone else who struggles with infertility, or someone else who's been through a divorce, you can find commonalities and you can find things that you can share that we can at least understand what has happened. And I would encourage you to seek out people that have experienced similar things than you have so that you don't feel so alone. No, they don't know exactly how you feel, but they can at least they can at least relate to what you've gone through. And that can be really, really helpful. So how do you rebuild your self-worth after you've suffered grief and been knocked on your ass, right? And you feel less than worthy and you're questioning how much value you bring to the table. Well, I'm going to give you 5 simple things that you can do to reclaim yourself and your self-worth. Okay, are you ready? Number 1, mirror work. Mirror, look in the mirror. So every morning, I want you to look at yourself in the mirror. You are going to start creating a relationship with yourself. And I'll tell you, it'll feel really, really uncomfortable at first. We're not used to looking at ourselves, especially eye to eye. But I want you to take some time, spend like 2 or 3 minutes in front of the mirror. And even if you don't feel like it or feel it, I want you to say the following: I am worthy. I am enough. I am still me. I am worthy. I am enough. I am still me. I want you to say that to yourself in the mirror. And just like in Mel Robbins' book, The High Five Habit, give yourself a high five in the mirror. Okay. Trust me, it works. It feels really silly at first to give yourself a high five in the mirror. And I was super uncomfortable when I started doing that. But I'll tell you, it is probably one of the most fun parts of my day. And it really starts my day off on a positive note. The first few times that you do it, you might just go, high five, high five. But eventually, trust me, you're going to get into it. And if it does nothing else, it's going to bring a smile to your face for a small second every morning. So try it. I really encourage you to. So mirror work is number one. Number two, celebrate the small wins. I don't care how small they are. Celebrate them. You got out of bed this morning? Woohoo, victory. You brushed your hair? Queen behavior. You said no when you didn't have the energy to do something? Damn right you did. Every small step is a big deal and worth celebrating. Maybe it's I took 5 minutes and enjoyed my coffee. Maybe it was I took a walk and I haven't been outside in days. Maybe it was I changed my pajamas. Every single win deserves to be celebrated. I don't care how you do it. Do a happy dance, just say yay, whatever it is, acknowledge and celebrate those small wins. Number three, surround yourself with people who remind you who you are. Your bestie, your family, your soccer team, your mom group, your mastermind people. The right people will remind you of your magic when you forget. And I know when we are initially suffering grief, our knee-jerk reaction and what we really want to do is just turtle and hide in our shell and hide from the world. And you know what? That's okay. You get to do that for a while, but don't stay there. Healing happens when you are with other people, especially when you are having connection with people who really love and support you and know just how awesome you are. It is so important to cultivate those connections, even if it's just once a week, once every couple of weeks. Be surrounded by the people who care about you and can remind you of just how amazing you are. Number four, intentionally reclaim joy. I want you to hear that again. Intentionally reclaim joy, even in the tiniest ways. If grief makes you feel like joy is out of reach, start small. Buy yourself flowers. I do this all the time. I felt weird at first, but I love doing this now. I buy myself flowers all the time, especially in the spring, which we're going into now. Love the colors, and Gerbers are my absolute favorite. So in case you ever want to send me flowers, just saying. Maybe you want to blast your favorite song in the car. I know I do this all the time. I crank up the tune that I love. I sing at the top of my lungs. It embarrasses my daughter all the time. She's always like, Mom, but I do it anyway. And you know what? I feel awesome when I'm done. And even if it's just for those 3 or 4 minutes of the song, it just feels great to let loose and let myself get into that music. It's a lot of joy. Maybe it's, like I said before, grabbing that cup of coffee, meeting a friend for a quick hello, getting a hug, any of those things. Find those moments of joy, because joy is not a betrayal of your grief. It is a lifeline out of it. So grab hold of it and don't let go. Find those tiny little moments during the day to be grateful and to feel that joy. Number five, give yourself permission to just exist. Some days you won't want to do anything, and that's okay. You don't need to be productive to be valuable. You are worthy simply because you exist and you're here breathing. Your worth is not defined by how productive you are or what you do. Your worth, you were born with worth. Your worth does not get to be questioned just because you're grieving or you're not as productive today as you were yesterday. You are worthy simply because you exist. So give yourself permission to feel that. All right. So now I want to take you through a really short exercise to help you connect with the you at your core. And this is something that I will do with my clients. I often take them through visualization exercises, and they have found them very helpful. I also offer visualization through the meditations that I do in my Sacred Oasis meditation membership program. So if this is something you're excited about, you can check it out. So I'm going to take you through a little exercise. And I want you to get comfortable, turn off any distractions that you have, and pause the video if you have to get comfortable. And make sure you're not going to be disturbed for the next like 30 seconds or a minute. Okay, are you ready? So take a deep breath in, hold it, and exhale. I want you to take another deep breath in, hold it, and exhale. Feel yourself relaxing. And if it's safe for you, I want you to close your eyes, and I invite you to do that now. So imagine standing in front of a grand ancient mirror, and this mirror is timeless. It has seen every version of you. There's the you before grief. There's you in the depths of your grief. And there's the you who is still standing, still breathing, still here. Now look closer. The cracks in the mirror, they're not flaws. They're your stories. They're proof that you have loved, lost, survived, and are still becoming. Now place your hands on the glass, feel its warmth. And as you look closer, something magical happens. The versions of you begin merging together. You are still whole. You are still worthy. Now imagine the mirror reflecting a future version of you, strong, radiant, filled with light. She reaches out her hand, and when you take it, you step into that version of yourself. Hold this image in your mind, and whenever you feel lost, come back to it. Now take a deep breath in and out. And when you're ready, open your eyes and carry the image that you created with you. Let it remind you that no amount of grief can take away your worth. Now listen, grief might try to convince you that you are not enough, but grief does not get the final say. You do. You are worthy of love, joy, and peace. You are enough just the way you are. And you are not lost. You are just finding your way. Self-love and self-compassion are integral to your healing. And you are not your grief. You are you, whole, enough, and worthy. If this episode spoke to you, I invite you to download my Grief and Self-Worth Reflection Guide. It's a simple, powerful tool to help you reconnect with yourself, recognize the ways grief has impacted your confidence and self-worth, and support you in starting to rebuild your self-confidence and worth one step at a time. So you can find the link to this guide down in the description below. And I encourage you to download it and work through it at your own pace. And don't forget, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs it, because none of us should have to navigate this grief storm alone. Thank you so much for being here, for listening, and for being you. You are stronger than you know, and you are so much more than your grief. You are worth it. See you next time on Grief, the emotional shitstorm you never signed up for.